Murder by Arnold Bennett. This story was first published in the year of 1926 and then as a sub-story of a book known as The Night Visitor and Other Stories, which was published in the year of 1931. So today I will read out this beautiful mystery story written by Arnold Bennett. Two men named respectively Lomax Harder and John Franting were walking side by side one autumn afternoon on the marine parade of the seaside resort and port of Quangate, or popularly known as English Channel. Both were well dressed and had the air of moderate wealth, and both were about 35 years of age. At this point, the resemblances between them ceased. Lomax Harder had refined features, an enormous forehead, fair hair, and a delicate, almost apologetic manner. John Franting was low browed, heavy chinned, scowling, defiant, indeed, what is called a rough, tough customer. Lomax Harder corresponded in appearance with the popular notion of a poet, save that he was carefully barbered. He was, in fact, a poet, and not unknown in the tiny, trifling, mad world where poetry is a matter of first rate interest. John Franting corresponded in appearance with the popular notion of a gambler, an amateur boxer, and in spare time a deluder of women. Popular notions sometimes fit the truth. Lomax Harder, somewhat nervously buttoning his overcoat, said in a quiet but firm and insistent tone, "Haven't you got anything to say?" John Franting stopped suddenly in front of a shop whose facade bore the sign Gontle Gunsmith. "Not in words," answered Franting. "I am going in here." And he brusquely entered the small shabby shop. Lomax Harder hesitated half a second and then followed his companion. The shopman was a middle aged gentleman wearing a black velvet coat. "Good afternoon," he greeted Frantic, with an expression and in a tone of urban condescension which seemed to indicate that Frantic was a wise as well as fortunate man in that he knew of the excellence of Guntles and had the wit to come into Guntles. For the name of Guntle was favorably and respectfully known wherever triggers are pressed, not only along the whole length of Channel coast, but throughout the England, was Guntle's renowned. Sportsmen would travel to Quangete from the far north and even from London to buy guns. To say, "I bought it at Guntle's," or "Old Guntle recommended it," was sufficient to silence any dispute concerning the merits of a firearm. Experts bowed the head before the unique reputation of Guntle. As for old Guntle, he was extremely and pardonably conceited. His conviction that no other gunsmith in the wide world could compare with him was absolute. He sold guns and rifles with the gesture of a monarch, conferring an honor. He never argued, he stated, and the customer who contradicted him was as likely as not to be courteously and icily informed by Guntle of the geographical situation of the shop door. Such shops exist in the English provinces, and nobody knows how they have achieved their renown. They could exist nowhere else. Good afternoon, said Frantic gruffly and paused. What can I do for you? Asked Mr. Guntle, as if saying, now don't be afraid. This shop is tremendous, and I am tremendous. But I shall not eat you. I want a revolver. Frantic snapped. Ah, a revolver? Commented Mr. Guntle, as if saying, a gun or a rifle, yes, but a revolver? An arm without individuality? Manufactured wholesale? However, I suppose I must deign to accommodate you. I presume you know something about revolvers, asked Mr. Guntle, as he began to produce the weapon. A little. Do you know the Webley Mark III? Can't say that I do. Ah, it is the best for all common purposes. And Mr. Guntle's glance said, have the goodness not to tell me it isn't. Frantic examined the Webley Mark III. You see, said Mr. Guntle, the point about it is that until the breech is properly closed, it cannot be fired, so that it can't blow open and maim or kill the would be murderer. Mr. Guntle smiled archly at one of his oldest jokes. What about suicides? Frantic grimly demanded. Ah, you might show me just how to load it, said Frantic. Mr. Guntle, having found ammunition, complied with this reasonable request. The barrel's a bit scratched, said Frantic. Mr. Guntle inspected the scratch with pain. He would have denied the scratch, but could not. Here is another one, said he, since you is so particular. He simply had to put customers in their place. You might load it, said Frantic. Mr. Guntle loaded the second revolver. I would like to try it, said Frantic. Certainly, said Mr. Guntle, and led Frantic out of the shop by the back and down to a cellar where revolvers could be experimented with. Lomax Harder was now alone in the shop. He hesitated a long time and then picked up the revolver rejected by Frantic, fingered it, put it down, and picked it up again. The back door of the shop opened suddenly and startled Harder. Harder dropped the revolver into his overcoat pocket, a thoughtless, quite unpremeditated act. He dared not remove the revolver. The revolver was as first in his pocket as though the pocket had been sewn up. And cartridges? Asked Mr. Guntle of Frantic. Oh, said Frantic, I have only had one shot. Five will be more than enough for the present. What does it weigh? Let me see. 4-inch barrel? Yes, 1 pound 4 ounces. Frantic paid for the revolver, receiving 13 shillings in change from a 5 pound note, and strode out of the shop, weapon in hand. He was gone before Lomax Harder decided upon a course of action. And for you, sir? said Mr. Gontle, addressing the poet. Harder suddenly comprehended that Mr. Gontle had mistaken him for a separate customer who had happened to enter the shop the moment after the first one. Harder and Fronting had said not a word to one another during the purchase, and Harder well knew that in the most exclusive shops it is a custom utterly to ignore a second customer until the first one has been dealt with. I want to see some foils. Harder spoke stammeringly, the only words that came into his head. Foils? Exclaimed Mr. Gontle, shocked as if to say, is it conceivable that you should imagine that I, Gontle, gunsmith, sell such things as foils? After a little talk, Harder apologized and departed. A thief. I'll call later and pay the fellow, said Harder to his restive conscience. No, I can't do that. I'll send him some anonymous postal orders. He crossed the parade and saw Frantic, a small left-handed figure, all alone, far below on the deserted sands, pointing the revolver. He thought that his ear caught the sound of discharge, but the distance was too great for him to be sure. He continued to watch, and at length, Frantic walked westward diagonally across the beach. He is going back to the Bellevue, thought Harder. The Bellevue being the hotel from which he had made Frantic, coming out half an hour earlier. He strode slowly towards the white hotel, but Frantic, who had evidently come up the face of the cliff in the penny lift, was before him. Harder, standing outside, saw Frantic seated in the lounge. Then Frantic rose and vanished down a long passage at the rear of the lounge. Harder entered the hotel rather guiltily. There was no hall porter at the door, and not a soul in the lounge or in sight of the lounge. Harder went down the long passage. At the end of the passage, Lomax Harder found himself in a billiard room, an apartment built partly of brick and partly of wood on a sort of courtyard behind the main structures of the hotel. The roof of iron and greeny glass rose to a point in the middle. On two sides of the high walls of the hotel obscured the light. Dusk was already closing in. A small fire burned feebly in the grate. A large radiator under the window was still cold, for though summer was finished, winter had not officially begun in the small, economically run hotel, so that the room was chilly. Nevertheless, in deference to the English passion for fresh air and discomfort, the window was wide open. Frantic in his overcoat and an unlit cigarette between his lips, stood lowering with his back to the bit of fire. At sight of Harder, he lifted his chin in a dangerous challenge. So, you are still following me about? He said resentfully to Harder. Yes, said the latter, with his curious, gentle primness of manner. I came down here especially to talk to you. I should have said all I had to say earlier, only you happened to be going out of the hotel just as I was coming in. You didn't seem to want to talk in the sick street, but there is some talking has to be done. I have a few things I must tell you. Harder appeared to be perfectly calm, and he felt perfectly calm. He advanced from the door towards the billiard table. Frantic raised his hand, displaying his square ended, brutal fingers in the twilight. Now, listen to me, he said, with cold, measured ferocity. You can't tell me anything. I don't know. If there is some talking to be done, I will do it myself. And when I have finished, you can get out. I know that my wife has taken a ticket for Copenhagen by the steamer from Harwich, and that is, she's been seeing to her passport and packing. And of course, I knew that you have interest in Copenhagen and spend about half your precious time there. I am not worrying to connect the two things. All that has got nothing to do with me. Emily has always seen a great deal of you, and I know that the last week or two she has been seeing you more than ever. Not that I mind that. I know that she objects to my treatment of her and my conduct generally. That is all right, but it is a matter that only concerns her and me. I mean that it is no concern of yours, for instance, or anybody else. If she objects enough, she can try and divorce me. I doubt if she would succeed, but you can never be sure with those new laws. Anyhow, she is my wife till she does divorce me. And so she has the usual duties and responsibilities towards me, even though I was the worst husband in the world. That is how I look at it in my old fashioned way. I have just had a letter from her. She knew I was here, and I expect that explains how you knew I was here. It does, Lomax Harder quietly said. Fanting pulled a letter out of his inner pocket and unfolded it. Yes, he said, glancing at it, and read some sentences aloud. I have absolutely decided to leave you, and I won't hide from you that I know you know who is doing what he can to help me. I can't live with you any longer. You may be very fond of me, as you say, but I find your way of showing your fondness too humiliating and painful. I have said this to you before, and now I am saying it for the last time. And so on and so on. Frantic tore the letter in two, dropped one half on the floor, twisted the other half into a spill, turned to the fire, and lit his cigarette. With this, I close the first part of this storytelling. This is The Murder by Arnold Bennett. Thank you for your patient hearing. And if you like this reading, kindly like and subscribe to the newsletter. Thank you and see you next week.